One.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Monday study session. It is Monday, October the 9th, 2023. The time is 11:44 a.m. Apologies to anyone who's been waiting. The Rules and Operations Committee business ran over the hour that we normally allot for the Rules and Operations Committee. So here we are in our Monday study session. All members are present except for Councilmember Morel, who we fully expect to be here shortly. Item 2 is review of tomorrow's October 10th council meeting agenda. Mr. Cox to brief the council.
Yes, Chair Mello, members of the council, Jeff Cox, council staff. You have in front of you the amended meeting agenda for October 10th, 2023. The council meeting will take place at 9:30 Tacoma Avenue South, room 1045 in the council chambers. It begins at 3 p.m. The first item on your agenda is the introduction and scheduling of ordinances, and that's under consent item 5B1. The first up is proposal 2023-45. This is an ordinance of the Pierce County Council authorizing wage adjustments for non-represented employees and amending the Pierce County Salary Classification Plan, setting an effective date. This is for referral to Rules and Operations Committee with a final council action date of November 14th, 2023. Next is proposal ordinance 2023-46. This is setting the 2024 ad valorem tax levies for Pierce County for levy in 2023 and collection in 2024. This is for referral to the Rules and Operations Committee with a final council action date of November 14, 2023. The next proposal is ordinance 2023-47, which is setting the 2024 ad valorem tax levies for conservation futures for levy in 2023 and collection in 2024. This is for referral to the Rules and Operations Committee with a final council action date of November 14, 2023. Next up, we have 2023-48, an ordinance setting the 2024 ad valorem tax levies for county roads for levy in 2023 and collection in 2024. This is for referral to the Rules and Operations Committee with a final council action date of November 14, 2023. Next up, we have ordinance 2023-50, which is amending chapter 1420 of the Pierce County Code Parks and Recreation fees by amending fee schedules and adding new fees for parks and recreation activities and facilities and adopting findings of facts and setting an effective date. This is for referral to the Community Development Committee with final action on November 14, 2023. And next up, ordinance 2023-51, which is amending the Parks Impact Fee, adopting amendments to Title 4A of the Pierce County Code impact fees and adopting findings of facts and setting an effective date. This is for referral to the Community Development Committee with a final council action date of November 14, 2023. Next, we have ordinance 2023-59, which is amending the Pierce County Code, Chapter 2.05, Planning and Public Works and Assessor Treasurer Development Review, Inspection, and Application Processing Fees. This amends Chapter 17C10, Administrative Provisions for Construction Codes, and Chapter 17C60 International Fire Code to phase the implementation date for updates of fees and setting effective dates. This will be referred to Community Development Committee with a final council action date of November 14, 2023. And the final ordinance for scheduling is ordinance 2023-63, an ordinance of the council adopting the Pierce County Capital Facilities Plan 2024 amendments, adopting findings of fact and setting an effective date. This is for referral to the Community Development Committee with final council action on November 14, 2023. Next up, you have on your consent agenda under item 2 resolutions, proposal R 2023-147, which is approving the 2023 Pierce County Board of Equalization's request to convene to act on timely filed taxpayer petitions which exceed the requirements of Revised Code of Washington 84.48.010. This is for referral to the Rules and Operations Committee with a final council action date of October 17, 2023. The next resolution is R 2023-148, accepting the 2023 Affordable Housing Funding recommendations and approving certain expenditures of funds. This is for referral to Health and Human Services Committee with a final council action date of October 24, 2023. Next resolution is R 2023-149, amending resolution R 2022-191 relating to appointments to external boards and commissions for the year 2023 to add appointments to the Sumner Library Capital Facility Area Governing Board. This will have a final council action on October 24th, 2023. And then a final resolution R 2023-151, repealing the planning and land services fiscal policy adopted pursuant to resolution number R 2011-129 and establishing the planning and public works fiscal policy for the Building and Development Fund. This is for referral to the Community Development Committee with final council action on November 14, 2023. Under sub item C, final action, you've got resolution R 2023-145, which is a resolution confirming the appointment of one new member, Jen Kozlowski, to the Anderson Island Citizens Advisory Board. And this is for final action. And then the next one for final action is R 2023-146, which is a resolution of the council confirming the appointment of one new member, Jeremy Kamel, and the reappointment of 3 existing members, Larry Nelson, Heather Rankos, and Tiffany Wagner, to the Anderson Island Citizens Advisory Board. And this is for final action. Under sub item D, you have action on the grant application awards. You'll be approving a national NOAA Restoring Fish Passages, Brighton Creek Culvert Replacement, Planning and Public Works grant, it appears. So that is through your consent agenda part of the agenda. Next up, under action items, you have item 7, proclamations, recognitions, and awards. You have one proclamation, that is proclaiming Saturday, October 14th, 2023 as Puget Sound Orca Recovery Day in Pierce County, Washington. Next under item 8, ordinances, you have proposal number 2023-39. This is an ordinance of the council relating to Title III of the Pierce County Code Personnel, amending chapters 3.08, definitions, 3.12.
You don't have to go through it all.
All right. This received a due pass recommendation at Rules and Operations, and it's up for final action. And that is your agenda for October 10th, 2023. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. We have a few amendments for tomorrow's agenda to review and a grant report. Let's take it in order if there's no objection with that. But before we get to the amendments and the grant report, are there questions about tomorrow's council meeting agenda? Not seeing any. So let's move to amendments. 2023-39, the updated personnel policies. There's Council Amendment 1, which is a technical amendment as requested by the department. Mr. Cox to brief Amendment 1.
Yes, and I will apologize if I missed something. I just got this for the first few minutes.
Thank you for covering for Ms. Long.
This makes some technical amendments to proposal 2023-39. It strikes lines 25 through 26 in the title, and it shows the strikeout language. And struck out found and amends the title to say that it will now read an ordinance of Pierce County Council relating to Title III of the Pierce County Code Personnel, amending chapters 3.08, definitions, 3.12, Code of Ethics, 3.14, whistleblower protection, 3.15, workplace safety and violence prevention, 3.32, classification plan, 3.40, personnel board appeals, 3.52, working conditions, 3.68, sick leave, 3.69, humanitarian catastrophic sick leave, 3.70, shared sick leave program, 3.72, vacation leave, 3.76.
We can see it.
Okay. And so you see the new language there. Next, it has,
Excuse me real quick. Mr. Dominique, I don't see anyone from Human Resources. I believe I asked them to be in attendance at Monday study session today. Do you see anyone from Human Resources Department? This is their proposal. I know we're asking Mr. Cox to do it for Ms. Long. I don't. Why don't you continue just summarizing? We can read read the amendment. So,
okay.
and I know you just got this,
Apologies
Mr.
for
Cox.
extending this out. So next you have under the recitals, you have a change. You're striking the language where it says administrative guidelines for the career service, and it'll just read that they're authorizing the Human Resources Director to promulgate and periodically amend the administrative guidelines, which are the established operating procedures necessary to implement Title III Pierce County Code. And it would show as this way I just described. The next change, you'll have an amendment to section 2 below and strike out. That's going to take section 2. The Human Resources Director shall update the administrative guidelines, and it's striking again the language for career services. So just read shall update the administrative guidelines accordingly. And then at page 11, line 39, you're striking out the language for career services. So it reads update the administrative guidelines necessary to ensure advancement of diversity, equity, inclusion. And that is amendment number 1 to proposal 2023-39.
Thank you. Again, this is requested by the department. Questions about Amendment 1, Councilmember Morel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that Mr. Cox, you just got this, but as far as changing the title goes, you don't think that's going to impact or delay the advertising on this particular?
Oh, I think it's substantial. It looks, again, giving it a cursory review, it appears to be substantially similar, so provide the necessary notice required.
Repeat that, I'm sorry.
It would provide the necessary notice required under the law, which is the objective of the notice requirement.
You think we're okay with our notice?
Right.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Morel. I know the department's not here yet, but you're reading, Mr. Cox, eliminating the words career service appropriately throughout. It's cleanup language. These administrative guidelines are for all staff. Is that what you understand? Non-represented staff and represented staff as appropriate? Because career service is a term of art, right?
Yes, I mean, it appears to be expanding the scope of the administrative guidelines and applicability of the code that's being adopted. So I think I'm concurring in there. So
Is Rebecca Lee with the department? No? Okay. I'll ask Ms. Murray and or Mr. Taylor to try to connect with someone from the Human Resources Department to see if we can get them in the Zoom room.
I think Judy Arch will be joining soon.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to Amendment 2, Mr. Cox.
So amendment number 2 states that the purpose is to add an example of an extenuating circumstance to be considered by Human Resources Director when rendering a decision as to whether to grant an exception to the timing for the use of bereavement leave. And then explains that an extenuating circumstance would include funeral memorial services planned later than 30 days after the death.
Thank you. Councilmember Coover to help speak to Amendment 2.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. This stems from a personal incident where when my mother died about 4 years ago, we were not able to plan for the funeral until the following year. And at that time, I was told I could not have the extended bereavement, even though, I mean, she was cremated. So I just was wanting to put in the example in case, just to have that there for future reference. We never know who will be the director at the time. They may have different ideas, but I just wanted to have that option in there.
Thank you, Councilmember Coover. Questions about Amendment 2, Vice Chair Campbell?
Yeah, don't know if you might, it's yours, you can amend it before you bring it tomorrow. The other example I would say, or extensive travel. If someone has to, they lose their parent on the East Coast and they have to travel there, and they're only given travel time alone can eat up the entire bereavement leave. So perhaps adding that in, but it's your amendment and I'm not going to work on any amendments to amendments.
I don't have a problem with that. I just was citing one because I thought that kind of incorporated that as well. One of the examples given to me at the time was in military funerals where they have to wait to get to a specific cemetery, I think in California, and that can be months, if not over a year, to get in line for that. So I mean, we could, add more things, but that seemed to encompass, I thought, beyond whatever the maximum was imposed.
We could talk offline. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm told Human Resources staff is coming into the Zoom room. Mr. Taylor,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Archer will be joining in just one moment.
thank you. Let's continue. Amendment, I don't see an amendment 3. I see an amendment 4 in the packet.
Three is still under construction. I'm trying to figure out how to word some of the things still.
So we'll go to amendment 4, which is in the packet. Mr. Cox.
Yeah, the purpose of the amendment is to restore the gender-specific pronouns throughout Title 3 Pierce County Code on the following pages and lines. And it lists those lines there, goes from page 1 all the way down to page 22. And
Thank you. Councilmember Coover to speak to amendment 4.
Thank you, Chair. I just didn't see a higher purpose for having staff go through all the time in doing gender neutral terms. It adds confusion to government and in the courtrooms, and I understand it is to the employees here, but I could not determine a higher purpose for confusing language. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Archer, thank you for being with us.
Hello,
Good morning. Can you hear us?
I can, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Director Archer, we are discussing proposed amendments to the 2023-39 amending Pierce County Code related to personnel. The first amendment 1 is by request of you and the department. And want you to just confirm our understanding about the need for amendment 1. But before I get to that, let me let Vice Chair Campbell weigh in.
Thank you. Could we have Director Archer explain how we got here in the first place on the underlying bill? Since she wasn't here when we introduced the underlying before we got to amendments.
Thank you. Yeah, let's take a step back. This was discussed in Rules and Operations, but not every member is on the Rules and Operations Committee and necessarily following this. So let's do that, as there does seem to be some community interest in our personnel policies here. So Director Archer, can you start with a briefing about how this update to our personnel policies is getting to us?
Yes, Human Resources has a regular cycle, roughly annually, of reviewing the administrative guidelines and making changes, either as a course of a legal change, so a law or a court case, and also in looking at it to improve it and to add things that may not be there.
Thank you. And specifically the diversity, equity, and inclusion definitions and policy that's in here and pronoun changes. Can you explain the recommendations about how those are coming to us from the department or other advisors?
So the pronoun changes were in the course of reviewing that document and to be more inclusive and to eliminate gender bias in how we refer to employees of the county and others. The DEI policy and the definitions was built on the work we'd already done, but council asked in 2021-109 for the executive to develop a DEI policy. So this is responsive to that. And this is the administrative guidelines is the appropriate place for a policy to be for county employees.
And briefly, you mentioned this in rules, but briefly, who had a hand in advising the department and the executive in making this recommendation on the DEI policy and definitions?
So responsive to 2021-109, the executive asked HR to come up with a formal policy. We did that drafting. It was then reviewed by the probably 50+ DEI work group members for their input. It was reviewed by the executive, it was reviewed by the prosecuting attorney, it was shared with all the directors and the electeds for their input. It was also shared with the Equity Review Committee, gave them an opportunity to provide input. Clearly, I want to make sure I am faithful to their guidance, which is they did not endorse it, neither did they turn it down. They just provided some input on what they saw should be in there. The final document that was a result of all of those inputs was bargained with our labor unions, all 21 of them, and this is in agreement with them as well. And we have presented it here to you today, or a month or so ago.
Thank you for that information, Director Archer. So now back to Amendment 1 as requested by the department, largely removes the term career service. Updates that's basically what it does. Can you explain the need for that change, please?
Yes, I believe it was the last set of revisions that was approved by council, changed the name of that document from the administrative guidelines for career service to just the administrative guidelines, because it also governs how we treat other employees that are not career service. And it was a Scribner's error. We did these revisions and didn't take into account a change that had already taken place.
Thanks. So this allows us to treat limited duration employees, extra hires, folks who are not career service, so that make sure the administrative guidelines are applicable to all employees, not just career service.
Correct.
Thank you for helping us make sure we understood the need for that cleanup language here in Amendment 1. We discussed Amendment 2, Director Archer. Have you seen this amendment package for amendments 2 through 5? You requested Amendment 1, so no, you drafted that, but have you seen the amendments 2 through 5?
I have not.
Can our staff get amendments 2 through 5 to, so please look for a message from Ms. Brenna Price in the Office
And
of the
they've
County
shared
Council.
it on the screen, so I can see it here.
Great. So Amendment 2, and you don't have to, you can get back, you have, 24 hours to get back to us if you want to. But just want to make sure there's no unintended consequences about this language. And we had discussion about the need. There's agreement about what Councilmember Cruver is trying to achieve here. Philosophically, there seems to be agreement. I heard from the council, it's a good idea. Want to make sure that the language is run by you to see if there's any unintended consequences or suggestions to make sure that you can understand legislative intent and implement it appropriately.
Okay.
So Councilmember Cruver, can I ask you to restate your legislative intent so the director can hear it?
I can do that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director. This is merely to give an idea of an extenuating circumstance, because that happened. In fact, I think you were here when this happened to me, and you did not have the authority to change things, but it is to allow someone to use their bereavement pay beyond the date that is in there now. It's just such as, so.
So that's the intent, Director Archer. If you have suggestions about how to meet the intent here in Amendment 2, please do get them to Mr. Cox or Councilmember Cruver for their consideration if there needs to be cleanup language to make sure we can meet legislative intent here.
Okay.
Thank you for reviewing that. We then went over Amendment 4, which is an amendment by Councilmember Cruver to remove the gender specific, to restore the gender specific pronouns throughout. And Councilmember Cruver explained her desire here. Does any member have any questions for Councilmember Cruver or Director Archer about why the gender non-specific pronouns are placed in the original bill on as requested by the department? Okay, we are now on Amendment 5. Mr. Cox.
Yes, Chair Mello, members of the council again. So you have a series of amendments here that are revised to revisions to propose new definitions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you see that in shading and strikeout, that diversity, the striking out where it currently says, or is proposed to say, diversity encompasses the range of similarities and differences each individual brings to the workplace. And it has including but unlimited a series of things, job experiences, education, age, et cetera. It would now say diversity encompasses the range of similarities and differences an individual brings to the workplace, period. So it strikes this, the catchment language, I guess, that tells you some of what those things might be. So that's at 3.08, 102. Under equity, it does something similar. It says a workplace has equity when the employees, and the language that's underlying language says are intentionally, purposely, and consciously provided access to learning, power, and resources, so all people have an opportunity to succeed in the workplace. It would revise it to say a workplace has equity when employees have access to learning and resources so that each employee can take advantage of career opportunities to succeed in the workplace. 3.08, 0160, under the title inclusion, say an inclusive workplace. The underlying language says an inclusive workplace values individual and group differences, establishes a culture where all individuals can be and feel welcome, respected, supported, valued, and empowered to participate. This strikes the language after an inclusive workplace and says, now would say an inclusive workplace recognizes that each individual brings different valuable skills and talents to the workplace that can be included for establishing and encouraging a welcoming atmosphere. And so those are the changes provided in this amendment number 5 to 2023-39. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and perhaps the offer of the amendment can as well.
Thank you. We'll ask Councilmember Cruver to further explain.
Thank you, Chair. As I was reading through these, I found the words to be very ambiguous in that they could be interpreted in many ways. Particularly, starting with the first one, the second part of it is already in code, 316. Then for equity, as I read that, I could not understand exactly what would be asked of the employee. As I look at employees, they have a job description that they are to fulfill. This is a lot of emotional material that is in here. So when I looked at intentionally, purposefully, consciously, I don't know what you're asking me to do or an employee. And then, access, then when it says power, what kind of power? I don't understand what that is going to lead to. So the gist was wanting folks to have the opportunity. So I believe that the language that I was formulated here is the intention of what we're getting at, but it takes out the ambiguity of the expectations on an employee. I don't know what it means to intentionally. So if I'm supposed to be intentional and someone thinks I'm not, can they complain? I just see a lot of confusion happening on that. And for inclusion, I again felt that, read this interpreting that what is being asked of the employees above and beyond, how they look, what their view of behavior is in a workplace. And so this gets to the spirit of the idea that we're recognizing the individual brings the valuable skills and talents to the workplace. But telling me how I'm supposed to value that person, what does that look like, is different to many people. And so it's very confusing on that. That was the intent and behind my amendment. Clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Archer, I'm not trying to put you in the middle of a council discussion, but just wondering if you have any feedback professionally and how you went through this process with numerous stakeholders, not trying to put you in an inappropriate position here, but from your professional chair as our Human Resources Director, seeing if you have any comments.
I would say that in particular with bargaining it with our 21 bargaining units, that was a place where if they felt that the language is unclear or would be detrimental to their members, because there is some responsibilities for employees at the end of that DEI policy, that would have been the place for it to be raised, yet none of our 21 labor partners objected to the language that was there. So they felt from their perspective that it was clear and unambiguous and that their members would be fairly treated given that language.
Thank you for that input about the process of how we got here. Vice Chair Campbell.
If they've reviewed it and agreed to it and we amend it, will we need to go back for, will we have to reopen the contracts or reopen negotiations or?
Yes, we would have to go back and rebargain this policy or any changes that are made on the entirety of the administrative guidelines that were brought forward to you. And as you are aware, we are in the middle of bargaining 17 contracts right now. So that work would need to be completed before this could be brought forward to them to look at for bargaining.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Coover.
Thank you, Chair. I can appreciate that, but if this is not dependent upon the budget, or any other, it's a standalone correction or on this ordinance. And it's not changing anything with benefits or dollars or anything of that nature. The language on this may have been vetted through some groups and some departments, but not with the public on the expectations of their servants, I want to say, or the employees of the county. I think this is a very transformational piece of legislation, and I can understand, the work involved in working with the groups, but I also know that having been at a DEI meeting in the past, that there are people that are afraid to speak out. And that could have been a situation there, and we have not really been able to vet this with the public. So I don't know if this is something that can be delayed till another time. That I would love to work with you, Director, on some of the language on this, but this is also a very, I want to say, expensive proposition in order to fulfill the direction that this goes. And I also am working on the section, which on my notes I left in the other room, but dealing with where it's giving authority to groups. And groups don't have rights. The individuals in the groups have rights. And the language, if I recall looking back, there was 40,000 that the department used in the beginning back in 2018 to begin working this program. And it's a very lucrative industry, I want to say, and I think it would behoove us to look through the requirements that are being made through the words that are used in this. So I don't know if it's proper to, I can ask for a delay on this, or I guess that would be all I could do at this point.
Thank you, Councilmember Coover. I'm not seeing any other hands. Well, I do. Councilmember Morel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, this would be a question for Ms. Archer. The document is inclusive of a lot of different aspects to updating the county code pertaining to workplace guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. So if there was a change made to certain sections, does that throw out the entire ordinance, or can that be addressed section by section with the bargaining units?
I am not 100% sure, because as much as I would say that some of these are independent of each other, our labor partners might see that differently and see that there is an interrelatedness. And we would have to be receptive at least to listen to what their concerns are.
Okay, I guess that was an honest answer. Would delaying this for any purpose or means, would that have an impact on the budget moving forward?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Just want to drill down here for a second. Councilmember Krueger said that this is a very expensive bill. So it seems to me that it would have budget implications. So is there budget implications with this or not? Perhaps Councilmember Krueger can explain that.
Councilmember Hoover.
Thank you, Chair. What I mean by that is as the policy is written here, it is not. But the actions that will be taken to implement the policies will. When you look at the expenses that are in programs too for the, when you read it, that all people have all things, then you have programs where everyone is going out to implement the knowledge of the programs, the classes that are taken. I believe we spent just in some of the training classes, maybe 25, 30,000 last year. And then again this year for the courses. Also, of course, I don't, here it is. I started taking one last night, but it wouldn't complete for me. But it was, I see coming into the policy in the future is the term belonging as well. So you've got diversity, inclusion, and belonging, which there again, it's adding more responsibilities on I want to say emotional, personal feelings, personal ideas of how they come to work and how they are expected to behave at work. So to me, there's a lot of behavior modification involved in this. That's part of why I'm a little passionate about it. So that's,
So
if we are able to delay this section, I can't imagine that it would be that big of a deal at this point. We can bring it back later.
Commissioner Campbell.
So I hear your thing about how it may impact how they see their job and how they come to work. But so some of these trainings that we're talking about, I mean, I may not have gone through all the ones that you have, may have gone through some. One I remember was when we brought in tribal leaders to help understand how working with tribal governance and how working with indigenous populations may be different than other populations and understanding those nuances. And a lot of people found that incredibly helpful and really changed the way that really our governance, because we did this top to bottom through many departments, the way that they interact with our tribal communities. And that is what you're looking to set aside?
No, not necessarily that. There are so many classes and so many courses that, but there's not different classes. There's not classes that show maybe how there are some great stories of America, yet I'm seeing stories of bad America. I'm seeing stories of bad white people. And there are good stories that involve all people that I'm not seeing being done. And even so, should the taxpayer be paying for a lot of these things is a big part of it.
So are we wanting the council to be in charge of writing the curriculum of what's being taught? And I mean, is that ultimately where we want to get?
I don't. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councilmember Campbell, for those questions. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we're going to a direction in government that our role, I thought as a county, is we have roads, we have sewers, we have transportation to deal with. Here we're getting into social emotional kinds of things that I question in the times that we have today, if that is where we should be investing dollars and investing in personal feelings. So when it is directing someone to, make sure someone feels welcome, when I'm trying to do something that I think is making someone feel welcome, they may not like that. Then what? Who's got the value? Where these are judgmental things. I don't think we should be going down that road. That's all. And I just was like, that's why my rewrite of definitions, I believe, was getting to the intent of the purpose. When I went back at looking at, this is not in these amendments, but it's in the other, one of the sections, where we want who we do business with to employ these same kinds of ideologies, which led to, when I was at the meeting back in 2018, there was a gal that had been with different corporations, and the gist of what she was saying is, we may not want to do business with these people because they don't have the right values. And she had brought in the term corporate social responsibility. So now we're dictating to the public that we may do business with, how they're supposed to think and act and do and feel. And I think we're going to a road where we have so many things on our plate. That is not a road we should travel on.
Thank you. Let's take one more comment about this, and I'm going to ask us to move on. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I just, coming from the perspective of working in public ed, one of the things that, as we were trying to figure out how to attract and retain educators and paraeducators, it came down to feeling welcome and part of the where you were going to work. And so one of the reasons I liked this was that it started to kind of really call that out. We want our employees to feel welcome. And so I'll leave the majority of my comments for tomorrow. But that, when I saw that, that's what I got from reading these three definitions, and we're starting to move so that everybody feels like coming and working for the county, they will feel welcome and appreciated for their diversity, their experiences, and what they bring to the table. And it calls it out specifically. So just, if we're trying to make sure that we have a workforce, this is the kind of thing that departments and agencies need to start looking at, because this is what our younger generation is looking for in employers. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hitchin. And thank you, Councilmember Coover, for bringing your amendments forward during study session so that we can understand them and consider them thoughtfully and not on the fly. So appreciate the work that's been done to prepare them for discussion. I know you're working on perhaps one other one. Hopefully that can be ready for Tuesday's study session. So again, we can understand it and consider it thoughtfully. Thank you for doing that. Dr. Archer, thank you for being available to answer our questions and remind us how this came to be through many different hands and discussions with bargaining units, employees, equity review committee, executive staff, et cetera. Thank you. Do think these changes are important to modernize and ensure we have a workforce that is reflective of the community that we serve. And we know we know through data that a diverse workplace is a better workplace. They solve problems better and deliver services better when we are able to reflect the diversity of the public that we serve. And we know how important these notions of inclusiveness and belonging are to retaining that diverse workplace, right? So many workplaces, ours included, are having such a difficult time retaining diverse individuals. And that's why I think we see you work so hard on these kinds of strategies and then some to get at the retention of a diverse workforce. Dr. Archer, any closing comments before we move on?
No, I do echo your concerns about attracting and retaining and employees feeling respected while they're at work, which is really, at the end of the day, what this addresses, and asking that as they interact with members of the public, that they also are treated with respect. For my upbringing, that's a very low standard, but a minimum must. And I will respond back on amendment number 2. As requested.
Thank you, Director Archer. Councilmember Coover, I really want to move on. I've allotted more time for this discussion than we anticipated. Do you?
I just
have a
wanted to
brief-
ask of Director Archer, if you wouldn't mind, if you could give me some of the reasons people are leaving. I've never heard of anyone leaving because they didn't feel welcome. If there's some instances you could get to me later, we can talk. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we're at grant reports. We have a NOAA Fish Passage Grant, Mr. Boki.
I shall be brief. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration restoring fish passage barrier removal. It's Brighton Creek Culvert. Brighton Creek is a tributary of the Nisqually River. It's just, in fact, it goes under Harts Lake Road, and it would replace a culvert there. And if you go online and look in surface water management, there's a steel culvert also big, and it really just blocks. I mean, the fish can't, it would have to actually jump into the steel pipe. So, and this is a big project, and the amount it is a competitive bid at the federal level, $6,700,000. Would go from 2024 to 2029. And we have folks from Surface Water Management to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Rebecca Lee was here from Surface Water Management. Perhaps she had to
I think we have somebody else.
leave. Is there anyone from Planning and Public Works in the Zoom room? We'll start, let me start with a. Perhaps they had to leave because they weren't anticipating it taking that long to get to that portion. Councilmember Herrera?
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question on, I don't know who can answer it. When it comes to these type of projects, will this project, if it's implemented, is it actually gonna help any type of salmon restoration? Because it seems like we piecemeal some of this work out, part of the creek, and then the rest of the creek is still rot, it needs more work. And I don't know if we're like focusing on, let's fix this creek, or it just seems like we're just kind of like doing this and nothing's getting done. I just don't know what the process is when it comes to we fixing the whole creek or just a part of it. I'm real curious on that. I mean, I'm all for this. It's just, that's just a question I'm throwing out there, how we funnel our resources or efforts to really get something done to get some fish passage.
I've long had the same concern, Councilmember Herrera, to make sure that we are doing things on a watershed basis and really thoughtfully, because if there's blockage downstream, this one doesn't help the situation. Mr. Swanson, we know you're in the Zoom room. We know you've been working on these issues with the department on our behalf. Mr. Swanson, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Did you hear the question from Councilmember Herrera about doing these fish passage projects on a watershed basis as much as possible?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I know you've brought that up several times in the discussions we've had on that when we get the inventory completed by the department, being able to look and have an inventory that goes beyond just the Pierce County or just the state projects, but also the private ones, so we could look at it more on, if I don't want to misquote you, but there's no point in us doing our projects on a creek if the creek is still blocked on a private culvert, a quarter mile up the creek. That if I've paraphrased, the discussions you've had in the past on this correctly. So there is the inventory is being completed by the department. When that comes back to be the direction council takes with that on it's not currently planned to be that as like a mapping exercise, that we have an entire inventory of Pierce County, all of the other cities, all of the private culverts there. The state has a little bit of that, but that's not currently the alignment of how the funding works. That would have to be further council direction.
Councilmember Herrera, I would encourage further dialogue when we bring the surface water improvement program before committee and the committee of the whole to continue to drill down on that. I think it's a really important conversation to understand the strategy as you're suggesting. And Mr. Swanson, I would ask you to package up the communication you and I have had with the department and get it to Councilmember Herrera because I know he has an interest in this, so he knows what we know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This will appear on tomorrow's council meeting agenda. Thank you, Mr. Boki. We are at, is there anything else for tomorrow's council meeting agenda? I don't see any. We're at item 3, review of committee agendas for the week. Mr. Cox.
Yes, Chair Mello, members of the council, Jeff Cox, council staff again. So your amended meeting schedule for October 9th through the 13th, 2023. You've got a Rules and Operations Committee meeting. You had it earlier today and you conducted a number of business items. I won't repeat all of those. At 11 o'clock, you had you're now in the middle of your Monday study session, and you will later have an executive session in this meeting. At 1:30 today, you have Public Safety Committee meeting.
It's canceled.
Oh, it's canceled, excuse me. Tuesday, tomorrow, October 10th, the Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee will be meeting. And you have 2 proposals there. You have a report and an update on ARPA. The first proposal is 2023-54. It's adopting the 2024-2044 sewer improvement program pursuant to the County Ordinance 2006-115S in Chapter 3678 of the Revised Code of Washington and RCW 3678-040 and 3675-530. And finding that each project contained therein is a public necessity. The date for final council action on this will be November 14th. The next item up is 2023-60, which is an ordinance adopting a 2024-2029 surface water improvement program pursuant to section 6.40 of the Pierce County Charter and the Revised Code of Washington, sections 3678, 3678-40, and 3675-30, and finding each project contained in the plan to be a public necessity. The date of final council action will be November 14th. And then you have a transportation alternatives report. You'll be hearing from Planning and Public Works, Letitia Neal, Engineering Manager, Melissa McFadden, County Engineer, and Angie Silva, Program Planning Manager. And then the next up, you have an ARPA broadband program update. And you'll be hearing from Planning and Public Works again, Debbie Ross, Strategic Business Manager, Melanie Halson, Assistant Director, and Tyler Patterson, right-of-way agent. At noon, you have a Tuesday study session. At 3 o'clock, you have your council meeting. Wednesday, October 11, 2023, at 1:30, you have a looks like you've got canceled subcommittee on homelessness. And on Thursday, October 12th, 9:30, you have a Pierce County Committee of the Whole, where you'll be hearing from Planning and Public Works Department on the budget, 2024-25 budget. The presenters will be Jen Tatson, Director, Melanie Halson, Assistant Director, Bruce Wagner, Deputy Director. And you'll have time for council member discussion, questions, comments, and other items regarding 2024-25 budget. And that's your amended meeting schedule for October 19th through the 13th. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There's one more committee of the whole this Thursday, 1:30 PM.
It's not on my agenda, but
Okay. So 1:30 PM on Thursday, there's a committee of the whole where we have the prosecuting attorney, the Department of Assigned Counsel, and we'll continue our discussion with the sheriff about the budget. And then on Wednesday, October the 11th, for other meetings, Wednesday, October the 11th, the Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors meeting. And that should be on everyone's calendars for Wednesday, October the 11th, when we put our Flood Control Zone District hats on.
this is the latest. What is it?
On the back.
Councilmember Morel?
Yeah,
on the back?
It should be on the back of the last page. But anyway, I got schooled in that by Ms. Long.
So Councilmember Herrera, you saw the Surface Water Improvement Program up for committee discussion tomorrow. I just wanted to point that out. It'd be a great place to drill down on that. Questions about committee agendas for the week? Not seeing any. We are at item 4, discussion of administrative items. Ms. Marie.
I don't have any items this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. We were at other business. I emailed out to, at the very end of your study session packet, I emailed out a draft procedure for reviewing the performance of the chief of staff and the chief legal counsel and setting performance goals. Just wanted to bring this to members' attention. It's not only in your study session packet, it's also in your email inboxes. This is simply meant to take seriously the development of performance goals for the two chiefs and supporting their performance and taking the performance evaluation process seriously. And this is meant to document future chairs and future councils can certainly change this, but to my knowledge, there's no procedure that I've been able to find for future chairs, current chair, future chairs, and future councils to refer back to about how to do this in a consistent way. So again, we can support our professional staff with appropriate performance goal setting and appropriate performance management. So this is just meant to document what a procedure should look like. The steps, hopefully knowing the steps on paper and following them can make it less confusing and intimidating, and we hopefully follow the checklist. You can see it lists the work anniversaries of the two chiefs. The reason why that's important is this is meant to work off of their work anniversaries and to do performance goal setting and performance evaluations, not by calendar year, but by their work anniversaries. So that's why the work anniversaries are highlighted there at the top of the procedure. Much of what we can do appropriately will be done in executive session. There's an appropriate exemption for the review of performance evaluations of public employees in executive session. And so we will use that exemption appropriately. And we will certainly do what we need to do appropriately in public session to do any final goal setting, final performance evaluations, and final compensation adjustments. We will do that appropriately in open session. You can see the procedure actually does a 6 months before work anniversary. So a 6-month check-in, verbal check-in on performance compared to goals, and then the various steps of what to do 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 2 weeks out, and then the week of their anniversary. Again, just meant to really note the steps of how to do this so that we take it seriously, we can refer to it. I find that when we don't know what the procedure is, nothing happens because this is not often the fun work and it often falls by the wayside, and all the other business of our lives take precedent. And so I wanted to document it, see if, doesn't have to be now, but if there's any feedback on this procedure about the steps, right, all 7 members manage the 2 chiefs, set the performance goals, set the compensation, do the performance evaluation. And you can see I've tried to outline how we include feedback from all 7 members. While the chair might do day-to-day management, it really is up to all 7 members to set the goals, set the performance evaluation, and we do the performance evaluation collectively. And this is meant to document how we go about doing that and including the voice and input of all 7 members. Realize you just saw this, but let me open it up. If there's any feedback at this time, I can always take feedback, and I'm going to leave this as a reference, hopefully building these kinds of things for reference, for future reference. Any feedback at this time? Councilmember Hitchin?
Thank you, Chair. I think the comment that you made about when there isn't a process, then nothing happens is pretty true. I mean, if we don't know what to do, and performance evaluations are one of those things that if you don't have expectations that are clearly articulated and laid out, that there can be legal actions brought against you if you aren't following or doing things. And this makes it really clear both for the employees that we are evaluating and providing feedback for. We change. The hope is there's consistency with our staff, and by providing a consistent process will help them, I think, perform better for this council and future councils. And that's one of the things, because we won't all be here. And the hope is that we're building a workforce that will be here to support the councils now and in the future. And I really appreciate having this kind of set out and making sure that what is a priority of mine in the work of the two chiefs might be completely different than what Councilmember Morel wants. And both are valid and part of the work that we're doing. But now I have a way and he has a way to make sure that's shared, so that the two employees that we're talking about in this case, this is super awkward, by the way, are able to hear what is going on, to be able to understand what needs we are trying to meet. So I think this works really well and it gives really clear, here's when, here's who, which is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Any other feedback at this time about the procedure we'll use to review the performance of the two chiefs? Not seeing any. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we can update that document as time goes on to keep it modern. We are at, well, let me first ask if there's any other business by members of the county council before we move into an executive session. Not seeing any. Ms. Murray, Mr. Cox, is there any other business before we move into an executive session?
No.
Mr. Cox, to state the purpose of the executive session.
The purpose of this executive session is to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment or to review the performance of a public employee. There are limitations, discussions of the governing body of salaries, wages, and other conditions. We generally apply within the agency shall occur in a meeting open to the public, and when the governing body elects to take final action, hiring, setting the salary of an individual employee or class of employee or discharging a disciplinary employee. Action shall be taken in the meeting open to the public.
Thank you. We're going to move into an executive session for, my suggestion is going to be 30 minutes. This is to evaluate the performance of a public employee. My suggestion is going to be 30 minutes. I do want to allow for a break. Many of us have been going at it for a few hours now. Would a to start the executive session at 12:55, is that acceptable to everybody? Give you about a 9-minute break. Let's begin at 12:55 and it'll be for a period of 30 minutes.
When will you return?
We're going to be in recess and 30 minutes plus 12:55, 1:25. We're at recess until 1:25. Let's put up the executive session.
Yeah.
The council is back from its executive session. The time is 1:33 p.m. And seeing no further business before the Pierce County Council in Monday's study session, we are adjourned.